If I, a stranger, am attracted with such magnetic power, how strong must have been the feeling with which the free old citizens clung to their native city, which was the world to them. It seemed to them impossible to live and die elsewhere. Hence the tragic and often frantic attempts of the exiled to return to their home. Unhappy was he who at eventide might not meet his friends in her squares, who was not baptized in the church of San Giovanni, and who could not have his children baptized there. It is the oldest church in the town, and bears in its interior the proud inscription that it will not be thrown down until the day of judgment. A belief as strong as that of the Romans, to whom eternity was to be the duration of their capital. Horace sang that his songs would last as long as the priestess ascended the steps there. Athens and Florence owed their greatness to their freedom. We are free when our longing to do all that we do for the good of our country is satisfied, but it must be independently and voluntarily. We must perceive ourselves to be a part of a whole, and that while we advance, we promote the advance of the whole at the same time. This feeling must be paramount to any other. With the Florentines, it rose above the bloodiest hostility of parties and families. Passion stooped before it. The city and her freedom lay nearest to every heart, and formed the end and aim of every dispute. No power without was to oppress them. None within the city herself was to have greater authority than another. Every citizen desired to cooperate for the general good. No third party was to come between to help forward their interests. So long as this jealousy of a personal right in the state ruled in the minds of the citizens, Florence was a free city. With the extinguishing of this passion, freedom perished, and in vain was every energy exerted to maintain it. That which, however, exhibits Athens and Florence as raised above other states, which likewise flourished through their freedom, is a second gift of nature, by which freedom was either circumscribed or extended, for both may be said of it, namely the capability in their citizens for an equal development of all human power. One-sided energy may do much, whether men or nations possess it. Egyptians, Romans, Englishmen are grand examples of this. The one-sidedness of their character, however, discovers itself again in their undertakings, and sometimes robs that which they achieve of the praise of beauty. In Athens and Florence, no passion for any time gained such ascendancy over the individuality of the people as to preponderate over others. If it happened at times for a short period, a speedy subversion of things brought back the equilibrium. The Florentine constitution depended on the resolutions of the moment, made by an assembly of citizens entitled to vote. Any power could be legally annulled, and equally legally another could be raised up in its stead. Nothing was wanting but a decree of the great parliament of citizens. A counter-vote was all that was necessary, so long as the great bell sounded, which called all the citizens together to the square in front of the palace of the government. Any revenge borne by one towards another might be decided by open force in the public street. Parliament was the lawfully appointed scene of revolution, in case the will of the people no longer accorded with that of the government. The citizens in that case invested a committee with dictatorial authority. The offices were newly filled. All offices were accessible to all citizens. Any man was qualified and called upon for any position. What sort of men must these citizens have been, who formed a stable and flourishing state with institutions so variable, sordid merchants and manufacturers? Yet how they fought for their freedom! Selfish policy and commerce, their role their sole interest? Yet were they the poets and historians of their country, avaricious shopkeepers and money changers, but dwelling in princely palaces, and these palaces built by their own masters and adorned with paintings and sculptures which had been likewise produced within the city. Everything put forth blossom, every blossom bore fruit. The fate of the country is like a ball, which in its eternal motion still rests over the right point. Still rests ever on the right point. Every Florentine work of art carries the whole of Florence within it. Dante's poems are the result of the wars, the negotiations, the religion, the philosophy, the gossip, the faults, the vice, the hatred, the love, and the revenge of the Florentines. All unconsciously assisted. Nothing might be lacking. From such a soil alone could such a work spring forth. From the Athenian mind alone could the tragedies of Sophocles and Aeschylus proceed. The history of the city has as much share in them as the genius of the men in whose minds imagination and passion sought expression in words. It makes a difference whether an artist is the self-conscious citizen of a free land or the richly rewarded subject of a ruler in whose ears liberty sounds like sedition and treason. A people is free not because it obeys no prince, but because of its own accord, its love. A people is free not because it obeys no prince. A people is free not because it obeys no prince, but because of its own accord it loves and supports the highest authority. Whether this be a prince or an aristocracy who hold the government in their hands. A prince there always is. In the freest republics, one man gives, after all, the casting vote. But he must be there because he is the first, and because all need him. It is only where each single man feels himself a part of the common basis upon which the commonwealth rests that we can speak of freedom and art. What have the statues in the villa of Hadrian to do with Rome and the desires of Rome? What the mighty columns of the baths of Caracalla with the ideal of the people in whose capital they arose? In Athens and Florence, however, we could say that no stone was laid on another. No picture, no poem came forth, but the entire population was its sponsor. Whether Santa Maria del Fiore was rebuilt, whether the Church of San Giovanni gained a couple of golden gates, whether Pisa was besieged, peace concluded, or a mad carnival procession celebrated, every one was concerned in it. The same general interest was evinced in it. The beautiful Simonetta, the most beautiful young maiden in the city, is buried. The whole of Florence follows her with tears in their eyes. And Lorenzo Medici, the first man in the state, writes an elegiac sonnet on her loss, which is on the lips of all. A newly painted chapel is open, no one may be missing. A foot race through the streets is arranged. Carpets hang out from every window. Contemplated from afar, the two cities stand before us like beautiful human figures, like women. With dark, sad glances and yet laughing lips, we step nearer. It seems one great, united family. We pass into the midst of them. It is like a beehive of human beings. Athens and her destiny is a symbol of the whole life of Greece. Florence is a symbol of the prime of Roman Italy, both so long as their liberty lasted, are a reflection of the golden age of their land and people. After liberty was lost, they are an image of the decline of both until their final ruin.